like to come down, please feel free. Now, what I'd like to do today is talk. I understand some of you are involved in a study group on Laudato Si. Are any of you here in this study group? Okay, so good. So some of you are getting a little familiar with the document. And I'd like to speak about what this means for our Catholic lives. So I'll give you a little background on Laudato Si, a little bit on the Franciscan aspects, and then some highlights. And so we'll see, the crisis is part of what we need to be concerned about as Catholics. Pope Francis takes it another step and really makes it part of the social teachings of the Church and gives us a whole encyclical. But Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI had a chapter in Caritas in Veritate, which was really commented upon at the time, and Benedict XVI, before Pope Francis, was called the Green Pope by some people. So this has been in the works for a number of the more recent papacies. And I think that's important because Laudato Si is in continuity with the social teachings that have come before in the Church. There are new teachings, and I'll comment on those, but it is very much in continuity with Pope Paul VI, St. John Paul II, and Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. And he's just, Pope Francis, in a few cases, goes beyond to extend the teachings. I think it's important to situate it in the social teachings of the Church and in the long tradition of teaching about creation of the Church, which Pope Francis is bringing to the fore a little bit more, but it's always been there. The second point about the Church's social doctrine is that charity is really what is at the heart of the social teachings of the Church. How do we better love one another, and how do we better love creation, and how do we better love God? So those are, and so that, I think the social teachings are very much driving us to greater charity if we practice them. And that goes for Laudato Si also. Okay, so now the introduction, because as I said, I think the organization of the encyclical, I remember when I first read it, I traveled a lot when we were doing the creation series, and we were on the road, and they had given me, Salt and Light had given me an earlier copy that they somehow got before the official release, and I literally stayed up all night because partly I knew I would have to comment on it the next day, but partly I just couldn't put it down. It's really just a tremendous document, and a really, I think, just beautifully written document with, I think it could take us 100 years to live into it, probably more. Okay, so, and one thing that struck me was how the organization was so instructive, just looking at the chapters. So the title, Laudato Si, maybe some of you have heard this, but it's actually an Umbrian title. So a couple weeks ago I had the opportunity to go to Italy, and I was in Assisi, in the land of Umbria, where St. Francis wrote his Canticle of the Creatures. And I believe this is, I always thought it was the first time that an encyclical would have a non-Latin title. Oh, welcome. Wonderful. And because usually the title of an encyclical is the first few words, and it's usually in Latin. There was one other time I've been told where we had a German title back 400 years ago or something. But so this Laudato Si is already, by its title, telling us there's going to be something a little different here. We're going to bring it down to St. Francis himself, the land where he lived, and what the mystery of his life was about. So as Franciscans, we're really very happy about this aspect, and I think it's a very Franciscan document. Then the subtitle is Care for Creation. And the word care, I know when I stayed up all night and reading it, I kept thinking, where's the word stewardship? I could hardly find it in the document, but care was all over the place. And later, when I got to a computer, I Googled it, and care was used 38 times throughout the encyclical, and stewardship only once. And so that, I think, is very significant. And later, I came across a statement by Cardinal Turkson, who is the cardinal who's in charge of the Pontifical, now the Council for Integral Ecology, I think is what it's called. And he said that word care was very deliberately chosen. And because when, here's his words. Whereas talk of stewardship implies a relationship based on duty, the notion of care taps into something deeper. When one cares for something, it is something one does with passion and love. So the Pope already up front, just in the title and subtitle, is giving us the tenor for the entire document. And that idea of care and charity and love, that this is something that we put our hearts into. It's not just something we do because it's our duty or it's a regulation or something. Now, in the introduction, Pope Francis then continues on this, and he talks about St. Francis as being an exemplar of the kind of ecology that he's speaking about. Now, St. Francis of Assisi, some of you, do you know who he is? Any of you? Any of you guys, are you coming from your catechism class? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Well, anybody heard of St. Francis of Assisi? Because it was his feast day this week. No? He lived in Assisi, and he loved animals. It said that he tamed the wolves, he talked to the birds, and he wrote a very beautiful canticle talking about how much he loved all the animals and all the creatures of the world before he died. And I think the Pope has some beautiful words about Francis's particular charism to creation. He says he communed with all creation, even preaching to the flowers, inviting them to praise the Lord just as if they were endowed with reason. His response to the world around him was so much more than intellectual appreciation or economic calculus. For to him, each and every creature was a sister, united to him by bonds of affection. That is why he felt called to care for all that exists. So it's as if the dogs and the cats and we have horses and cows and chickens. They're all, they're like our brothers and sisters. And so Francis called them brother, sun, sister, moon in his famous poem. And I think so his relationship is one of caring like you would care for your brother or your sister. And it's not just, oh, because I have to do this. Sometimes we care for our brother and sister because we have to, but hopefully we actually really like them and we want to be nice to them, right? So I think that's important to know that the document itself is very Franciscan in that sense of care and brotherly and sisterly love. Then after he, oh no. Yay! Oh, I love computers. Okay. So then the first chapter, he starts with the science, which is really great. And he had a consulting relationship with a number of scientists who contributed to the chapter. I think I would have to clarify, it came out in the papers that this was a climate change encyclical, and I don't think that's really true in the encyclical if you've read through it. Climate change is mentioned in chapter 1 as one of the scientific challenges that we need to worry about, but he also talks about water issues, which are extremely serious globally, biodiversity, and he talks about rapidification, this sense that we constantly need more and more and more consumer items, that we don't stop, that those are some of the major issues behind the challenges that we have. So I think we need to broaden our minds. Climate change is definitely a serious issue, but we also have other issues like water issues and biodiversity that we need to be concerned about. And we want also to situate the encyclical in a much larger social tradition. So, but he puts the science right up front, which is really important. And he says he wants us to know about what's actually going on, and the science tells us that, because he wants us to become painfully aware, so that we turn what's happening in the world into our own personal suffering. So we feel sad when we hear about what's happening to animals going extinct or water getting polluted. So again, it goes down to what is in our hearts with all of this. Then only after he does the science does he go into the theology. So chapter 2 is the theology, he calls it the gospel of creation. And he says theology isn't really alive unless it gets into dialogue. And he wants to bring it into dialogue with the science. And he feels too that religion and science can both contribute to our full development and to understanding the challenges that we face. So he's bringing those two fields together. And that's very near to my own heart. I have that background in science and theology, and I think it's really important for the whole church that we do more of that. And he's giving an example of how to do that. Then he says, well, we can't really look at this crisis without looking at ourselves. Because what is the cause of the crisis? It's you and me and everybody else, right? Our patterns of consumption. So the external science issues that we look at are kind of symptomatic of an internal something going on in our society and in our cultures. And we have to learn to diagnose that internal disorder. What is wrong inside of ourselves? And he talks about there being two roots, one being technology, wonderful technology. Oh God. And then, and that idea of, what is true progress? Is it really true progress that we always have to have newer cell phones or more and more technology? He's not anti-technology, but he's asking us to look at that. What are cell phones doing to us? And maybe should we have them? How many of you all have cell phones already? You have a tablet? Okay. So, but maybe we should wait. Maybe we should say you shouldn't have any until you're 15. Okay, and then after he talks about kind of diagnosing our internal disorders, and so one of them being technology, and the second one being, who do we understand ourselves to be as human beings? What is our place in this world? And that's something he really wants us to look at. Then he says, well, I think the answer is what we call integral ecology, and that's chapter 4. And integral ecology means ecology that isn't just scientific ecology, but it also includes social ecology, it includes cultural ecology, it includes how humans and the earth fit together with God. And that's what he's trying to introduce, this idea of an integral ecology that goes broader than just water pollution. And that's what I think we're all seeking to figure out, how do we live this integral ecology. Then after that, he says, okay, now what can we do? He's the Pope who's getting us to do stuff, right? And so he says, here's some lines of approach. So if you have an economics background or politics background, read chapter 5, because he's telling you, what do we need to do economically? What do we need to do politically? And he's gone from, this is kind of the big picture, globally, what kind of things do we need to do? Then in chapter 6, he says, let's look though at the micro level, because in the end it comes down to what's inside of each of our hearts and how we treat the world around us. And so how are we going to educate our young people in ecology, in this kind of integral ecology? So we go from the science, then bringing the science into dialogue with theology, then bringing it inside ourselves, diagnosing our own culpability, our own fault for this, like when we review our conscience for the sacrament of penance, and then looking at putting all of this together in a kind of integral ecology as our answer, then the big picture, and then again bringing it back to in the hearts of each one of us and how we educate ourselves into this kind of integral ecology. And that, I think, just a short comment as a Franciscan, I have to keep emphasizing the Franciscan aspects. But a wonderful Franciscan, St. Bonaventure, who tried to put into words what St. Francis lived, wrote a spiritual treatise called the Itinerarium, which means, it's just a Latin word, but it means the pilgrimage of the soul to God. So how we get to God. And he puts it into steps. And he starts with the world outside. So in Franciscan spirituality, we start with creation. And it's through creation that we perceive God's footprints. Like when you go to the beach and you see someone's footprints, you know someone has looked at creation and how beautiful it is. We can see God's footprints there. There's something much greater than us created that, right? And so we start with the world outside. But as human beings, and that's where, animals relate, this is what they perceive, the world outside. But as human beings, we then bring this into ourselves. And we meditate on this, we study it, we make spiritualities, we study science about it, we bring it inside ourselves, says Bonaventure. And then, if we have a faith, we also raise that up and we give it all back to God. And so this is the spiritual journey, and this is how we get to God in the Franciscan way. And I think this, encyclical is doing that same sort of thing. We look at the outer stuff, the science and all that, then we diagnose the internal, and then we raise it all to God. Okay, now, chapter 2. So a few highlights where I want to talk about some things where the Pope has kind of broken new ground in this document. Chapter 2 is the theology, the gospel of creation. And there is a line, I think, that we call in theology a theological development, something new, a new teaching that hasn't been articulated so clearly before. And I might be overstepping my bounds because I thought I would hear more people writing about this, but I still keep saying it in all my talks. But I think there's a theological development in this chapter. And it's in this paragraph 66. Our human life is grounded in 3 fundamental and closely intertwined relationships: with God, with our neighbor, and with the earth itself. Now, what have you learned in catechism? Who are we to love? Don't be shy. Who do we love first? God, right? Yeah, catechism for all of you. Okay, so who do we love first? God. And who else do we love? Our neighbor, right? And that's what we've always learned, and that's still there. But what is the Pope adding here? The earth, right? To me, it's always been in our tradition that we would care for creation because it is God's creation. But to say it as explicitly as this, I think is a theological development. And it means when we examine our consciences, so before we go to confession, the sacrament of penance, we look at how have we offended God, how have we offended our neighbor, and how have we mistreated creation. That's how I read this. So we should be bringing these even ecological sins, excess consumerism, the way we treat the earth, or the way we treat the items we consume, our possessions. We should be bringing that to the confessional. And I see Father is here, so I don't know if people are doing this in confession, but I think we should be looking toward that in the coming generations. Then chapter 3, a highlight. So I'm just giving you a big picture of things, and then I'd like to show you some clips from the series that might help to make this real. Okay, so chapter 3, this is getting to our hearts, getting to the underlying roots in our hearts. And I mentioned the technology issue. And he talks about we kind of have a schizophrenia, and he uses that word, schizophrenia, where we have 2 extremes. One is a complete reliance on technology, which is happening more and more. The other extreme is this kind of almost making nature be God, so almost divinizing nature. So on the one side, the technocratic paradigm is all about humans dominating the earth, having a lot of consumerism, humans almost taking the place of God because we can control everything. Now, and a lot of what we do, is for the good of humanity, but we also get into this mindset that we are the masters of everything. We are the masters of our own fate. We're the masters of our own health. We can keep having robotic parts added to us, and the next thing you know, we'll be eternal. We won't have to die. And we'll be able to create organisms in our laboratories that will recreate organs in our bodies, and then when our organ starts to go, we can put a new one in. So this is real, this is happening in laboratories all over the world. So it's almost humans starting to take the place of God that ends up with this one side of the technocratic paradigm. And it can also lead, unfortunately, to the sense that there's really no objective truth, because there's nothing beyond ourselves, and we tend to use others for what we want, right? And so there's a whole, and the Pope talks about this, there's a whole culture of kind of selfishness and using, and the sense that the earth is just for us to use for our own purposes. That comes out of that side of this schizophrenic and I think disorder that we're dealing with internally in our culture today. On the other side is this biocentrism, where we think that humans are the problem. Nature is more important than humans. God is His nature. We're just a product of chance. We're just one organism in the whole evolutionary line. That's all we are. And so we kind of lose the sense of the dignity of our own life. And that's on the other side. So he says we have this schizophrenia where we get pulled between those two. And I think it is something we all struggle with internally just because we're surrounded by this. But our faith tells us we don't need to stay there. And we have to remember, and I think this is one of the most important phrases in the document, there can be no ecology without an adequate anthropology. So we have to know who we are as human beings and preserve that, I think especially as Catholics, if we want to really save the earth. And who are we as human beings? Well, we are an animal in the evolutionary sequence, yes, but we're something more than that because we're created in the image and likeness of God. And we have a very special place in creation. We're the only animal that can care for creation like we can. And so we have to remember that if we diminish ourselves to just being another animal like your dog or cat, we are not going to be able to assume the responsibility that we need to assume. On the other hand, if we think that we're the masters of everything, we actually usurp the place of God, and that messes us up too. So we have to keep our proper place of who we are, a very special place of responsibility, a very special place of care that resides in us, and that means we have a lot of responsibility. Okay, now chapter 6. So I want now to look at a little bit from the educational side and the spirituality side. A few points from chapter 6 about the need for ecological conversion, and he actually uses that term, that we need to be converted. And when you convert means a turning away or a turning toward. Okay, so, it's telling me a little better, but I'm just going to talk. So when we turn away, we're turning away from something bad, and we turn away towards something good when we convert. And that's what we're trying to do with an ecological conversion. It's turn away from consumerism, excess technology, damaging the earth, and toward a way that is a life-giving relationship with creation. And this quote is one that has been quoted by many, that living our vocation to be protectors of God's handiwork is essential to a life of virtue. It's not an optional or secondary aspect of our Christian experience. So it's essential. It's something we should all be adopting. Right? So, and he's very clear, and I would again say he's emphasizing this a lot in the document, that we have to start to make this real, and he's relying on us to do it. So the fact that you're doing here,
sorry, sister.
Oh, that's okay. I think it's a message from God that we have to, that this idea of the technocratic paradigm is something we need to look at. So anyway, and I appreciate all your running around doing everything. That's right. Okay, so this is a vocation for us to be protectors of God's creation. It's not like a secondary thing in Catholic life. He's putting it right in the center. And it's very important, and it needs to be in continuity with the other. So this is also Respect Life Sunday, right? And this protecting of life of created beings needs to be in continuity with the protecting of life of human beings. That is all one ethical continuum, and the Catholic Church is a church that can hold up that continuum. It's not, oh, I'm pro-life, but I don't care about creation. No, I love creation and I love life, and that means I love human life too. So it's all part of that continuum, and that's something I think that as Catholics, we need to start bridging those gaps, that gap there, both on the side of the responsibility to care for created life, and also on the side of that includes human life. And he says that in this area too, he says there's a nobility in the duty to care for creation through little daily actions. And it is wonderful how education can bring about real changes in lifestyle. So the little things matter in the day. And I know I like to recycle. I think it's a great practice. And I've had people over the years say, you know, what difference does it make if you put that plastic bottle in the recycling? I mean, it's only one plastic bottle. And it's true, but I felt very vindicated when I read the encyclical because he says, and he literally says this, he said, if you turn down your thermometer even 1 degree, these aren't his exact words, but in order to save energy out of a love for creation, that is a virtuous act. And I think we have to remember, so again, I was like, yay! So putting your one bottle in the recycling is a virtuous act. If you're doing it out of love, any small act that you do for anyone out of love is a virtuous act. And so every day, the little things that you do, say something little that you do for your mom or dad, or something little that you do for your friend, that is a virtuous act. Or something little that you do to take care of a plant. Those are all very important aspects of how we develop this ecological conversion. And I think he really emphasizes that in chapter 6. So the small things matter. And the other thing is when 1 million people do one small good thing in a day, that's 1 million good things, right? And if 1 billion people do it, that's 1 billion good things. That swings the needle toward the good side, right? And that's what we want to do in our lives, is swing the needle toward the good sides. And that takes a lot of small acts by a lot of people. So I think, there are people working on the big, big ecological issues, but for most of us who are in the parish in our daily lives, it's the small things that really matter. How do you take care of your own grounds at your land or at the parish? Do you have a small garden at the parish and you all take turns taking care of it? These are all things that you can do, and they build not only the caring for the creation, but they also build relationships with those with whom you work. If you're all working on a garden together, or you're all even just going down to the lake for a walk along the lake together and brunch on the water or something. Those are all small things that you do that help to bring about this ecological conversion. And we need a lot more creativity on how we can help ourselves convert in this way that the Pope is speaking about in the document. So again, don't forget about the nobility in the small daily actions of caring for one another, for God, and for creation. Now, how do we do this? So just a few more details. So he says we have to recognize our own sins and failures and really be sorry for them and want to change. And that relates to how we treat the possessions that we have, how we treat the land that we have. So all of this is kind of an inner examination. Where am I, consuming too much? Could I have skipped buying that extra, cell phone or iPad and gone over to visit an elderly person or planted a plant and taken care of it for someone? So that kind of, the small details of every day kind of looking at interiorly. Did I need to buy that third cup of coffee at Starbucks, or could I have, invited someone over to my home, made them a cup of coffee, and had it be a time of being together? So I think we really need to look at that, recognizing our own sins and failures, not to hammer ourselves, but to become more aware. Then also to become more grateful, because every day, especially in this country, we are given so many gifts, and we have so much. Most of us are extremely comfortable, we don't suffer, we have water, we have lots of food, we have everything we need and more. But are we grateful? So can we begin and end the day with a thank you to God? And that's, I think, part of this whole ecological conversion, because we thank God for everything we have around us and for the beauty around us. And then also to be aware of our interconnectedness. So everything that I do affects what you do. So when I do something, my action affects all those around me, and it affects all the plants around me too, and all the soil around me. So everything is interconnected, and we need to be more aware of that. We're not isolated. So when I do something bad, it actually affects everything, even if we can't see it right away, right? And when I do something good, it also affects everything, even if we can't see it, we may never see it. So becoming aware of how interconnected we are with one another is very important. And that's also how we live in community, knowing that we're all connected to everyone else around us. You're connected to your family, right? And to your mom and dad, your brothers and sisters, your dog. And then I think also, as we said before, recognizing how special we are is unlike any other animal on this earth, where we have the same elements, but there's something about us that's different. And because of that, we have a much greater responsibility, so we have to recognize that. How can we live that responsibility, and how can we be creative? Because we have imaginations like no other animal does. And how can we use our imagination to make the world better? And then also, it is about each of our individual conversions, but it's also about how do we convert as a community. So as a parish, how do we convert? As a city, how do we convert? As a family, how do we convert? So there are many levels of a community conversion that have to start with each one of us, but then they go beyond because everything is interconnected. So all of this is part of how we approach our conversion. And then learning how to read reality and recognize the importance of Sundays, so the Sabbath, which is a day to heal our relationships with God, with others, and with creation. And that's important that we recognize the Sabbath, so not working on the Sabbath, because otherwise sometimes what we do is just like doing it for the sake of doing it. It becomes an empty activism, as he says. And then the sacraments, the importance of the sacraments, how important it is, because in the Eucharist, that is the body and blood of Christ. Those are elements that were grown. If you want to grow your own wheat and make the host, and maybe some of you have done that, that is what our communion is. But it represents the complete sacrifice of Christ on the cross. And everything in nature is laying its life down so it can be eaten. That's how nature works. And that the Eucharist is a spiritual dimension of that. It's a complete sacrifice, so we all have to sacrifice a little bit so that others can survive. And that is a way of cosmic care or cosmic love. So I think a broader view of the Eucharist is also important as we think about this ecological conversion. And then, of course, the importance of the family. The idea that less is more, because I think we tend to think, I need more and more and more, and sometimes you're happier when you have a little bit less, right? So maybe giving up things, that's why we give up something for Lent, just to realize, hey, I can be close to God if I don't have to worry about all this other stuff, right? I can spend more time on God or on my friends. And so there's other kinds of happiness other than just getting more and more. And so that's part of this conversion also. Expressing gratitude, as we said, and especially maybe we could start picking up praying grace before and after meals if you don't do that already. That is a way of being grateful for everything that we've been given. Now, I'd like to show you a few clips of some examples from the series that are just ways that other groups have lived out this kind of ecological conversion. It's not trying to say that you need to do this, but just to give you ideas for how other groups have done it. So, if we can get it to play. Okay.
While we work in the soil and we work to improve and heal the environment here, we do that through the hands of our people. And we've seen over and over again how a child who's a problem in the classroom becomes a leader in the outdoor classroom. How the restorative effects of working in the soil help heal the experience of a returning citizen. And some of those folks are people returning from prison. And what we find is that the act of doing this work itself has a therapeutic value that goes far beyond anything that they experienced while they were incarcerated. So we're helping to heal the environment, but at the same time, it is helping to heal us as a people and help heal us as a society.
Sister Daniel Marie Salino would say that this is not just physically true, but there is also a spiritual reality.
Cultivating the soil and gardening actually helps to cultivate virtue in the human person. So when you have someone who has the ability to garden and is given the ability to garden, they're in a sense participating in the fertility of God. And so it's actually a way of holiness, I would say. This is an empowerment for poor persons all over the world, really, and refugees and such, to be given land.
We hear over and over again that our priorities are stopping crime, our priorities are cleaning up the street, but so often I think that if we were to reprioritize caring for the environment, we would heal all of those other things. If we put everybody to work, healing the environment, if our people got to live in a place that was clean and green and healthy, those other things that we are so concerned about would heal themselves as well.
Here we grow cherries, pears, we have a few peach trees actually, and lots of apple trees. We even press our own apples, which
You
makes
do?
delicious cider.
Oh my gosh, and then you sell the cider?
No, we drink it.
This next one is an example of a community in California that decided to use wetlands to treat their waste rather than build a wastewater treatment plant. And it has transformed the community.
It's very cost effective because the main energy we use is solar energy. And then it also provides a lot of wildlife habitat, provides a lot of open space, and we allow people to kind of recreate in the marshes. So, you know, a normal treatment plant, they're not very attractive for people to come and visit. People don't really want to go and recreate at the wastewater treatment plant. Whereas here, the community really comes and uses our area as an important recreation in the city. We also have a lot of educational things going on here where we work with Humboldt State University and have students doing research down here, and then we have birds that nest here in the spring, and then this is an important stopover on the Pacific Flyway for migratory waterfowl. And 2 years ago, we were having the extreme drought, and normally there's lots of flooded areas and natural marshes, and they were all dried out, but our marsh was all green and verdant. People that like the birds were really happy that we were here because we were a resource for the migratory birds to stop in and kind of fuel up and get energy before they go.
And so treating wastewater became an opportunity for restoring the environment.
Arcata had a problem. They need a bigger wastewater treatment plant. There's economic implications for that. There's environmental implications. They got together. They were able to actually dialogue, which is very important. And instead, they came up with a new idea of let's use the existing plant, but run our wastewater through a wetland and use the natural rhythms in the wetland to actually break down our waste. And so now they've got a win-win. Rather than a fighting, they've got a win-win. The human and the natural ecology are both flourishing. But that came out of their, first of all, being aware of what the issue was and being able to dialogue about it, and then being willing to try something different, to take a risk. And then this last one is something that we can do. A way that we could perhaps work with animals. This is the Clearwater Lake, the Clearwater Aquarium. You're taking, in a sense, the suffering of the animal who is hurt, you know, who's damaged and disfigured. And that is becoming a source of reconciliation for humans who have been hurt and disfigured. And in a sense, they discover their own giftedness by relating to this animal. So it's a really almost a mutual mediation there, where the animal is being brought into its fullest purpose by the humans who help the animal, and then the animal is helping the humans who come to work, those who are disfigured and who lost limbs and things. They're becoming more whom they're meant to be in that relationship. So again, it's a win-win. And that's, I think, what we're searching for in mediation, those kinds of solutions.
I personally believe that when you give back, you're going to receive. And I think with Winter's story, it truly has come full circle in many different ways. And we couldn't have predicted that. We just did it because we genuinely felt that we should help this animal, and we feel we should help all of these animals because that's the right thing to do. We're about environmental education and conservation. That is our mission. And the fact that we can, by doing that, help people makes what we do even better, and that's where it comes full circle.
Her ruined tail, they made a prosthetic tail, and now we have all kinds of people, veterans, children who've lost limbs, children with special disabilities who come and relate to her, and it's just it's a national magnet for that. And because of what we did with the animal, it's a way of bringing the humans through to another level of relationship. So I think our time is pretty much over, but I just thought maybe I'd stop and ask for any questions or comments or before we have to leave. So thank you all for bearing with me through this.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any questions?
Comment. Thank you. I really appreciate what you do and your dedication, and God bless you for what you do.
I don't have a question, but I just want you to know that we have copies of the encyclical available for purchase. They are only $11, so if you want to see me after this presentation, I have some available.
Well, I just want us to thank Sister Demian. Thank you so much. Likewise, I want us to thank the sisters that came with Sister Demian, Sister Mary Paul Molan, Sister Anne Rose Kanowski, Sister Paulette Maritima. She's from Africa. Well, you know, when Sister started talking about St. Francis of Assisi, it kind of reminded me of my trip to Assisi. I've been there now 3 times, and I took up the name Francis, my confirmation name, after reading the life of St. Francis in my middle school. So I was so happy when we went to Assisi to celebrate Mass there with my parishioners. So it kind of brings back that memory. Caring for animals, because I remember in those days reading about the life of St. Francis of Assisi, going there to take care of the animals and blessing them, and they'll be rejoicing. And we've been to their community. We were there this summer for our staff retreat, which we really enjoyed. Yes, we were there. All our staff, we were there. So it's just a beautiful community. And Sister Fred will summarize this encyclical saying that it's about the love of God, love of neighbor, and love of the earth. Reminding us that each time we do little things, it really matters. The recycling. I want to thank the Green Team, because since they started this ministry, it has been a great change in our parish and in our homes. You can see the recycling containers over there, and we have that in our offices and in our homes. So I think the message is gradually sinking in. So I want to thank the Green Team. And since I said, even if you recycle a bottle of water, makes a change. Little things matter. And then she talked about appreciation. Beginning each day, I thanking God for all the blessings that we have. Because sometimes we just think about the things that we want, things we need, and we forget to count the blessings of God. Blessings on our family, blessings, the sacraments that we receive here in the church. So, sister, I want to thank you so much for enlightening us all the more, bringing this message home. Sometimes talk about reading the encyclical, but you kind of summarize everything and you made it to connect with our spiritual life, our family life, and our social life about technology, So, thank you so much, sister, and we could not to promise that we put all this message into practice. Thank you so much, and thanks to the Green Team. God bless all of you for coming here. Thank you.
I think we should also thank, I really appreciate your coming, and just know that you have a big mission with this in your life too. New ideas that none of your parents have had that you will bring forth for us. So you just live it too, okay?
Before the prayers, may the Green Team please rise. The Green Team. Jenny, Jane, and the rest. Please. Thank you so much. Thank you for all you do. And it's not just even the church. Even when we have activities in the school, we see this team equally happening. So we are so proud of them. But not to pray that the good Lord will bless all of us as we put all this thing into practice. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Thank you for Sister Damian and the rest of the sisters that came with her. Thank you for all our parishioners that are listening to this message. May we put this message into practice to love God, love our neighbor, and love the earth. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. The Lord be with you. May the Almighty God bless you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Peace be with you.